All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday. Thank you again for signing up as well and for joining us for our Design Your Future in UX event series. This is our final step along the way for the month of May, and we are rounding out this series today with a panel of creative and technical recruiters here to answer all of your burning questions. To kick things off, I want to give you a walkthrough of our call format for this session. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little chat icon. That's where we're going to be active and engaging with one another there. And just to make sure that everyone knows where that icon is, I'm going to drop a chat in there for you. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you are joining us from today as well. We'd love to get to know a little bit more about you. And as you are doing so, I also want to walk you through our questions icon, which is of equal importance, I assure you. With that questions icon, that's how you're going to be giving us some feedback, asking us any burning questions that you might have. Let us know a little bit more about what's on your mind. So feel free to participate in that questions chat there. I love all of the locales coming through hot and fast here, y'all. Look at that. Utah, LA, New York, Paris, fantastic. Anyone and everyone around the world, which is greatly representative of our Design Lab community as well. So welcome. Thank you again for joining us. We're also going to be adding a poll onto your screen a little bit later as well, just to get a sense of if you're coming to us from the Design Lab community or if you are first to us here, if you're new to our gang. So I'm going to be publishing that any second now, so feel free to participate in that as well. Alrighty, great. We're seeing some great responses coming in. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. All right, so to kick things off, I'm going to be actually handing it over to one of our panelists for introductions. But for starters, my name is Glenn Cook. I'm a member of our admissions team. Some of you may already be in my inbox. I may be in some of yours. So if that is the case, great to connect with you again. If not, welcome for the first time. And I'll be handing it over to Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Some of you may already recognize me as the normal moderator for these events. I'm in a different chair today. I'm excited to be a speaker, but I am the Career Services Program Manager here at Designlab. I have a background in creative and technical recruiting here in Portland, Oregon. So hiring UX and product designers, but all the other folks who work with those people, product designer or product managers, marketing, dev, engineering, all of that good stuff. And currently I work with supporting you all on your career journey if you are a part of our community now, getting through UXA and thinking about your journey beyond Design Lab. So that's me. And I can popcorn it to Tajay.
Perfect. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Tajay Cox. I'm the recruiter here at Designlab. So I joined the team about a year ago. Well, next month will make a year. And I have an ed tech background. I focused on recruiting in that space. I myself am a bootcamp grad, but not from Designlab. Long story, but I am a bootcamp grad. And so I'm very passionate about the work that we do and just finding opportunities for people that come from a similar background as myself. Thanks for coming. Popcorn over to Alexis.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Alexis Dane, and I currently am a corporate recruiter for Columbia Sportswear Company in Oregon. I actually live out in Charlotte, North Carolina now, and I have a prior recruiting history in UX specifically when I was on the agency side. And I've actually also had the opportunity in the past to be a mentor here for Designlab. So I'm familiar with that and had a really great experience, and am so happy to answer any questions you all have today.
Wonderful. All right, fantastic. Y'all, I can't tell you how gracious we are to have you here. And really, I think for everyone who's attending, this is a really fantastic and rewarding experience. So with that in mind, let's get right into it. So it covers all sorts of questions about anything and anything under the industry is already flying in. That's fantastic. So Tajay, I'll actually start off with you. So we have a question that came in, one-liner, super straightforward. How important are cover letters? What would you say is kind of your review process there as well?
Okay, perfect. Well, for me, I will say this is for me in general. I'm not a huge fan of cover letters, but they are important. So with that being said, if you're going to include a cover letter, if a company asks for it, always put it on there. If it's optional, still include it because anything that's optional is going to give you a one-up. for all the people who don't include it. So to kick off the cover letter, I always say, do an intro about yourself. Just pop off the first paragraph intro. Second paragraph should be you looking at that job advert or job description. Look at the responsibilities. Where do you align? Find the alignment and then draw from previous experiences and add that into that second paragraph. Third paragraph, you're going to close it up. You're going to do a call of action. So thank you for taking the time to read this. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. How can they contact you, whether that's email, here's X, Y, and Z information, LinkedIn, and all. Main part, formatting. You want to make sure you have a set format. Don't just do one large paragraph. You want to introduce yourself. Like you can put the company name on there, follow up with hiring manager. If you know the recruiter's name, the recruiter for that company, and then go into your 3-paragraph format.
Excellent. Thank you. As a former English major, I feel like you're speaking right to my heart on that one. That hit me like right in my soul. So I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, great. Alexis, I'll hand it over to you for our next question. So Corey has chimed in. Corey, thank you so much for contributing already. What can junior designers do to stand out to recruiters and kind of land that first job? You know, Corey has shared that they're seeing a lot of experienced designers kind of getting that extra step. So what would you say to someone looking for that design role?
Yeah, I think when you are first starting out, you really want to make sure that your portfolio is as strong as it can possibly be. I know you have projects that you do as part of Designlab, but you know, even if there are folks on this call that maybe haven't gone through that program yet, that would sort of give you that portfolio. I would say that you really want to make sure you have work to show, because if you are applying for a design job, that is going to be the most important thing, especially for those more entry-level positions where you're not going to have a long resume to sort of, you know, back up what your capabilities are. So I think that really make sure that's strong, even if it means that you're doing some side projects, you know, with your network. Maybe it's paid, maybe it's not, but it's giving you additional content to have in that portfolio. Make sure that thing is dialed in. And, you know, if you can have other people look at it, you just want to get as much input, tinker with it over time, keep it fresh as you go along. You know, hopefully you're not on the job search too long, but just make sure you are keeping it fresh over time as well. I think that's going to be the most important thing you can possibly do. And then, you know, networking as well, obviously. I'm sure questions will come up around that. So I think I'll kind of close it with that. Just really focus on your portfolio.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Alexis, so much. I think that ever-evolving concept, right, that continued body of work is so true. You know, kind of calling it to your most recent developments, but also reflecting back on anything adjacent experience as well. Thank you so much. All right, Jessica, you are up next. So Anthony has asked us here, what are the things that newer designers tend to overlook that recruiters really look for in their portfolios? And he does ask us to be brutally honest here. So I'm going to take that as an open invitation, but definitely anything you'd like to contribute there, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I do want to loop Lex in on this after I give my thoughts, because I'm curious as like our guru UX person from back in the day. But I think for recruiters, you really do have to think of us as like, we're the first step, right? We're the gatekeepers, as I've heard described before. Like, we're the people you have to convey that you know what you're doing enough that we can go, okay, they get it. And then we can move you to the person who actually understands how to do your job. So recruiters we're not designers. I mean, the people in this room have like taken design courses and understand it well enough because we've worked in the industry for a long time, but none of us are product designers. So it is absolutely crucial on your portfolio that you are clear about what your role was, what you did. Like, if I am hiring a product designer who needs to be able to do like icon work, I need to see those icons in your portfolio. If I can't find them, pass. If I am my client is specifically asking for somebody who's got mobile design experience, and I like click on your first project and it's a responsive web design, it's like all laptop screens and et cetera, I'm gonna be like, well, I didn't find mobile here and I can't figure out which projects it's in. Goodbye. Like, if it's not clear to me the who, the what, and the why, like who, what type of company, travel, health, blah, blah. What your role in it was, like what facet of you did you do, or facets, and like what was it, like where, like again, what part of the process, what elements did you create, etc. And I can't find that on your resume within the first 30 seconds to a minute. Like I'm really not going to explore that far. Like I will move on quickly, because I'm assuming it's not there if I can't find it. So the brutally honest is what we tend to overlook, is that we just can't find it. Like I don't know where I'm supposed to go. So I'm overlooking it, not because maybe it isn't in your case study. Maybe you do have your wireframes. I know with Designlab, we teach you to really show your process, which is important for recruiters to see those images more than the story, the writing part. We're looking for frames, we're looking for imagery. But if we can't figure out where to go, which case study to click on, like you've missed us already from the landing page. So that's my thought on that. Lex, I'm curious.
Yeah, for sure. I echo that. I mean, recruiters are looking at a lot of resumes and portfolios every day, and they don't have a whole lot of time, just like the hiring managers that they are partnering with don't have a lot of time. So there's a need to show what you need to show and make it super obvious and easy on your audience. So if you are applying for a specific role in a specific industry and you happen to have a project that speaks to that, put that at the top of your portfolio. If you can like rearrange, maybe that one used to be at the bottom, put it at the top, like hit them over the head with what they need to see and make it very, very easy to understand. Same goes, put your top skills at the top of your resume in bullet points instead of having that be at the very bottom, because everything needs to be bite-sized. And if a recruiter can't get to what they need to see within 30 seconds, frankly, they're probably going to move on. Not because they're cruel, but because they just straight up don't have time. And when you're trying to get that foot in the door, it's like they'll really see if you took that extra effort to make your submission relevant to the role that you're actually applying for. And I think that I'm assuming this will come up later. I feel like I could just like go on and on about this, so I'll just stop. But yeah, I'm with you, Jessica.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. Well, there you go. You asked for brutally honest, hit them over the head, right? That's the takeaway. But no, absolutely. I think that upfront and presentative style, right? It's almost like you want a rewarding user experience. Shocking, right? That works hand in hand there. But definitely great feedback. Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to kind of throw this one out to the good of the order here, because I feel like even though it may be Tajay's turn a little bit, she kind of touched on this a little earlier, but Samantha has chimed in. Thank you so much for your question, Samantha. Should we use a traditional resume format or one with a more, I love this, designy resume format when applying for these design jobs? Do you have any recommendations, y'all, in terms of format or stylistic approaches for a resume?
Okay, I can pop in and then you guys can add on. For me, I typically say I prefer, and this is preference, I think it's a preference thing. I prefer the black and white resumes. But at the same time, if you do decide to dress up your resume, it still needs to, kind of what I said earlier, be consistent. So it needs to be a natural flow to the resume. Even if you go black or white or you go hot pink or orange, please don't go hot pink or orange though. You still want it to be something that you can read. So it won't be like, if it's gonna annoy my eyes, I'm not gonna wanna read through it. Like, so be mindful of fonts, be mindful of layouts. If you're gonna list a job, like keep the same fonts in regards to style consistent. So if my font for the title versus the company name is different, make sure it's like that for each role that you list on the application, on the resume. And then in regards to bullet style, if you're gonna use bullets, try to stay consistent with the same type of bullet style. Like, it's very important, because with a ton of different things on the application, you can be, on the resume, you can become distracted. And then I still have 2,000-3,000 resumes to look at depending on the size of the company, or 400 or 500 if it's a smaller company. You don't want to get pushed off to the side just because I couldn't keep my eyes consistently flowing through your resume. You guys want to add in on the
Yeah, I'll
design
jump
one?
in. Jess, do you mind? Yeah, I feel similarly to everything that you shared, and I would just add that I think that there's a middle ground between a designed resume and then just like your plain old boring template. And I've seen plenty of resumes created in InDesign, for example, that are still really, really easy to read, easy to follow, clean, but they somehow look elevated. And I think that that is your best option, really, in design, especially because even though in UX, perhaps you're going to be on the visual side of that, but perhaps you're not, you still want to show that you know what looks good. And I think you can do that with a really clean, designed resume that kind of shows you understand modern design aesthetics too. So, white space, like just really focusing on that simplicity, especially for user experience, right? So I think I prefer those for design, and I think that they do take a little bit more work. I think also it's really smart, honestly, if you can find examples online. I feel like you can find everything on Google. So you could see if you might find examples of perhaps more experienced designers to get inspiration, so that you're not necessarily using a template, you're creating something from scratch, but you're getting inspiration to sort of see that like really clean design, minimalist, but you're not just, using Canva. Though Canva has some pretty awesome templates, I have to say. You could probably find one on there.
Quit throwing shade at Canva, Alexis. Sorry, I did want to chime in with some additional thoughts, because I agree with what Tajay and Alexis are saying, and I have like kind of an additional. I swear I'm going to add to this thought bubble. One of the things that I typically recommend to my students in career services is I think it's important to have a little bit of both. Like, AKA, you have two resumes. One that is a simple Google Doc or Word doc, if you still use Word, that's like ATS friendly. And then one that might be a little bit more designed and feel like you and feel like it aligns with your portfolio. I am okay with a fun resume, but I think y'all can tell that like tracks with my personality. And so when I create my resume, that's also part of what I know is I'm like, I put a little bit of like boldness on my resume because this is what they're going to get if they hire me. And I'm sort of leaning into, you're going to like, this is what I'm like in person too. So that's sort of where I'm at, like, because I am more of a bold, not a minimalist person, but I still make sure that the flow is right. Like 100% listen to like what Tajay and Alexis are saying, like flow has to make sense. Those skills at the top really like SEO, summarize who you are and like why I should keep reading. And white space is so crucial. I mean, y'all are either aspiring, thinking about joining the Designlab community, or you're in the Designlab community, which does make you a designer already. Like, let's just like, you might still be learning, but you're a designer. Use UX principles in your resume. I want to highlight what Lex said there. So that's my last 2 cents.
No, I love it. Absolutely. I think, again, kind of treading that line, right, of not differentiating too far off the beaten path, but at the same time, having something that's eye-catching and giving that personality to come through the page, as you mentioned as well, Jessica. Excellent. All right. So not to go immediately right back to you, but our chatter here is also named Jessica, so I feel like I have to throw it right back your way. But a great question, I think, for the larger group as well. Do you have any specific candidates that stood out to you and made a great impression, and what about them made them stand out for you?
Oh gosh, that is a really great question. And I actually would like us to round robin on that, because I think we all have like our own answer for that. But to start with, and I'll take this in a couple different ways. Like first, because I'm guessing there are a lot of folks who are junior or thinking about getting into UX design. One of the things that really stood out to me in a candidate, she was recently graduated from a boot camp. And she actually applied for a role of mine that was too senior for her. But what she did was so thoughtful and smart. She included in her cover letter or in her little like response, like, why do you want this job? I can't remember which format it was. Take those seriously. She wrote a specific note to me and said, hi, I know that I am not qualified yet for this role, but I'm really excited about this company. And I think, this is where I want to aspire to be in my career. I also understand that junior roles are not posted all the time, and that sometimes you can find those within your community. So if you ever have an opportunity that better aligns with my skill set and have the time to review my resume, I would so appreciate a conversation. And I actually got on a call with her just to chat, because there was such a clarity of, she knew my role, she knew the ask, she wasn't imposing. And she also was very self-aware of where her skill level was. So that was a really interesting opportunity and way to connect with somebody. And so I think if I can distill that, where I love and appreciate candidates is where they really understand what my role as the recruiter is, how challenging it can be. And, that I there is a I want this job from you, Jessica, but I'm not going to bully you or pressure you. I know you've got a lot going on, and I respect and value that this might not be the right role for me at this time. And that's for senior candidates sometimes too. So that's my answer, is a self-awareness in my candidates.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think I will share, there's one interaction that pops into my mind when thinking about this. And it kind of is similar to Jessica's in that it took some thinking on the candidate's part and a little bit of extra effort. They were going to be moving to the area. This is when I was in Portland, and were looking for jobs and reached out to me on LinkedIn, had found my bio on my company website and had mentioned something about it, just the way you would talk to a human, right? Which I think recruiters really appreciate that, because we do get asked for things a lot. And so it was just this really nice, human connection. And it was so personable and well thought out, and also just kind of chill and short. And I ended up having a coffee meeting. This was in the before times when people used to do that. And ended up having a coffee meeting with her when she was in town looking at, jobs. I ended up finding her a position a couple of months later, and kind of shockingly, because normally that wouldn't really work out. So I think it's kind of an anomaly, right? I don't think it's going to happen every time, but I think it's a really great example of going that extra mile, finding out what you can. And sometimes lovely things can come from that. I know it's not reasonable to put in all of this effort all of the time. And I think now, especially with more digital processes, and you really, there's more barriers, I guess, now in some ways, though companies are going back to being in person. But I think that it's really similar to Jessica's, just in that, you know what, I'm just a human reaching out to another human, and I am going to point out this thing that I noticed, and I'm going to see if that works. And in this case, it really, really did, and it really paid off. And I like to use that example because I just think it's so unique for somebody to actually do anything like that. It really stood out to me.
And I'm going to kind of piggyback off of both of you. So for me, my person was actually qualified for the role. The candidate that stood out to me, they were qualified for the role. They were a cultural fit. They had the background. Everything was perfect. And then I had another candidate who also was very perfect for the role. And it came down truly to final interviews. So unfortunately, when you have two great candidates and you have to tell someone who's been through multiple rounds of interview, hey, I'm sorry, you're not a good fit for the role right now, or we're not going to be moving forward with you. And you want to personalize that conversation, of course. So I did have a personal conversation with the person on the side in email, just letting them know, right now, we weren't able to move forward with them, but we really did enjoy learning about them. And if they would let's stay in contact. My surprise, budget opened up, and then not even a month later, we were able to bring that other person on. But because I was able to cater that conversation, the tough conversation of saying, we're not moving forward with you, they hadn't landed a job yet. And it was just as simple as sending them an offer. Like, there were no additional interviews, anything like that. So when you do have those moments where you don't necessarily like get the job, you get all the way to the end, it's not that you weren't a great candidate sometimes. It just might be one person might be a little bit better than you, or they may have a little bit more experience than you. So I say that to say, like, don't internalize like rejection or ruin a relationship, because I've had people, send me nice little emails with very fruitful language in there, because they feel as if their time was wasted. But in reality, like, we did value you. You would not have gotten that far in the process if we didn't value. So I do say, just like, have a level of respect when connecting with recruiters. And then just also like try to keep that door open, because you don't know what roles or opportunities may come down the line for you.
No, absolutely. I think there's some great call outs for sure, because I think just to a fault of our own, sometimes we think of, this onboarding or this recruitment process as this linear line, and that's not often the case, right? There are those divergence and those deviants from it. So definitely, I think kind of keeping that loop going and keeping those doors, as you said, Tajay, as open as possible as well, really goes a long way in the long run as well. All right, I feel like we're going to be round robining this one as well, but Alexis, I'll start with you. So Anne has asked, do you have any form of preference for the structure of online case studies? Do you like to see the solution off the top? Is there a sneak peek of the solution and then right into the problem and process? Would love your insight. So preferences abound. Feel free.
I love that you're thinking this way. It's great. I think that I personally don't have a really strong preference. I don't think it would make or break whether or not the solution came first. I think in my mind, I like you to set the stage. So sort of what was the problem? So I guess kind of more that traditional route of problem on through the process to the solution at the end. I think that would be my preference in terms of how my brain works, but I don't think that that's going to make or break. I think as long as your process is strong, you're showing it in a way that makes sense, and it looks, clean, and your copy is copy edited and all of that. I think that and you're what the company's looking for. I think that you would get an interview regardless of if you had the solution first or last.
Yeah, and I would just agree. I mean, I think we said it earlier, but keep your case study like UX, like think about it as UX, and like for recruiters, just make sure that those visuals are there, because that's often what we're scanning for first to like pause on, is like, I'm looking for an image that looks like this, a wireframe. And so I'm going to scroll until I find it, and then, then kind of go, okay, I see it, and now I'm going to go back in and dig through. But yeah, I agree with Lex.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Thank you both. I think definitely, again, right, it always comes down to your personal preferences and things along those lines as well. So, kind of works in lockstep there. Daniel has a question, and I'll send this over to you, Jessica, of how many case studies should you have?
This is a really interesting question, because things will really evolve as you go through your career. I would say in a portfolio, there's no like right answer, like, it's got to be 5. Like, I think it's visually how you lay it out, and then how you organize your site architecture. So if you get to a stage in your career where you have a lot, of different projects, and they kind of vary, you could do something like format your site by type, right? Like you format it by like, this is UX only, this is UI only, this is web design, etc. And then I can go into the navigation bar and go to those projects. On any particular page though, I would say, and like if they're in squares, like an even number preferably. If they're in a list, it doesn't really matter. So somewhere between like 4 and 5 is probably enough for any particular page. If you have like way more than, it does mean like trimming. But if you have more than like, honestly, 8 or 10, I'm really going to be like, well, I'm only looking at like 1 or 2. Like I'm really only looking at 1 or 2. Like, you know what I mean? So like, it's good. Get rid of the ones you don't like anymore. Get rid of the ones that don't represent you anymore. Like maybe you're not interested in like SaaS projects anymore. You're not interested in healthcare anymore. Like get it off. But like, yeah, like it's not a hard and fast number, but you do want it to be like really trimmed representative of like what is most important. And then if you want to get more than like I said, 4 to 5 on there, you can navigation to like, this is my like graphic design stuff. This is my web design stuff. This is my UX stuff. If you want to break it down a bit more like that.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think Alexis, this kind of harkens back to what you were saying a little earlier as well, of kind of prioritizing similar work to the project that you're applying for and the work that you're applying for. So really structuring it that way as well if you are gearing towards a specific industry. Excellent. All right. So Connor has contributed as well. Thank you so much, Connor, for both Tajay and Alexis. So Jessica, you're excluded. Shame. I know. What tools and software do you commonly use during the recruiting and hiring process? How might this differ when compared to hiring managers or design leads?
I'll say that it's really going to vary by the company that you're applying to. So there are instances where a hiring manager is doing their own hiring. In those instances, they're probably not using sophisticated software, because if they're doing their own recruiting, that means they don't have a talent acquisition team, most likely, which would necessitate a proper, applicant tracking system. So I think in those instances, they're probably going to either LinkedIn or Dribbble or Behance or any of the portfolio sites. There's probably more modern ones that that you all know about that I don't. So I think that it really just depends on the size of the company. For corporate, so obviously I work for a global company and we use an applicant tracking system. Ours is not the gnarly kind where you're going to be lost in there if you don't have the right format of resume, where it's not keyword optimized. Like we've all heard those horror stories where you're just lost forever because some software system. So it's an example of a large global company that is actually a human is reviewing your resume. And you need to make sure that your portfolio link is on your resume, because it may or may not make it through into the system. So make sure that you're supplying that wherever it's asking you to do that. So I think there could be other instances if you're applying to another company that does have more difficult software to get through. You are just going to have to know that that's part of it, and you can't win them all. So if there's, some system that feels like, you feel like you were never even reviewed, well, potentially that's the case, right? But hopefully that's less common. A company like Columbia, even if you're not selected to move forward, you will at least get an email saying that, you weren't quite the right fit for that position. So you should know where you stand there. And then I think every single recruiter ever is certainly using LinkedIn and the recruiter version of LinkedIn as well. So that's a place, obviously, that's where you can go find recruiters if you're going that route and you're trying to, build those connections. Again, I feel like I'm starting to talk about another topic now, so I'm going to stop talking.
I have a similar answer as well. So I've only recruited through ATS, and it's me recruiting by myself or a couple other recruiters, but it's always a human for every company that I work with. But I've also been on the other side of the table where I feel like things were missing that I'm like, I know I submitted that when I put the application in, but I got the call back, but something's missing, but I know I submitted it. So I would say for the most part, like if you are going to be applying to smaller companies, you're probably going to have someone like myself or Alexis or Jessica actually reviewing your application, your resume, cover letter, portfolio, all of those things. So again, you want to be punctual about making sure you have everything on there, because that might be your only time for that role. And then if it is for a bigger company, one thing I always say is network. So even if there's 1,000 people applying, if you have one connection, somebody can just send an email and be like, oh, hey, I have a friend who I used to work with at X, Y, and Z company, or my colleague from X, Y, and Z school applied, and that can get you bumped on the list. If it's in the case that it's like thousands of people applying, and then we found our person at 500 and you are applicant 501, you missed out when you could have just reached out to someone. So always try to do the little coffee chats. You can do them virtually now. Just take 10, 15 minutes of someone's time and just get your foot in that door, because your network is really where you're going to get a lot of like contacts that you might not necessarily get with big companies.
No, absolutely. I think there's some great takeaways for sure. Kind of those human elements still shining through. I think a lot of us fear that our applications are going to this proverbial digital recycling bin out there, but definitely to know that there's still humans on the other end a lot of the time and still doing that processing as well. Definitely, I think gives me some solace, of course. And I think that, of course, our Design Lab team, a great experience as well. All right, so next question, I'm going to throw Jessica's way, but again, group, feel free to contribute as well. This comes from Joelle. Joelle, thank you so much for contributing. How crucial is it to have a bachelor's degree to get hired? Despite having professional experience, I'm concerned that not having a degree will make it more difficult for me to get hired.
That's a good question. I have opinions. So like full candor, I started my career without a bachelor's degree. I think it's all how you set up yourself, what you're willing to and not willing to divulge on a resume. And I'll talk more about that. And then really, I think, especially in UX, and dev, any of these industries where there is a strong boot camp and like certificate style learning experience, there is a bigger mindset change around I'm looking for your ability more than like, a college or whatever degree on your resume. Now, when I say about what you're willing to divulge, I mean, like, if you've gone through the Design Lab program, put that close to the top, highlight it, show that it's like important and a part of your journey. For me, when I was getting started in my career, education went way to the bottom. And like, I just didn't highlight it. I didn't talk about it. I talked about why I was qualified. I talked about my experience because that was more important than the education aspect, that I was bringing my ability to the table. So there are still, I'm not going to pretend that there aren't still managers who get a little bit like, but I wanted a blah, blah, blah degree. Like, and then I roll my eyes at them. And then it's our job as like, you have to hope that your recruiter is on the other side going, why do you really care about this? They got that 5 years ago. Like, it doesn't apply anymore. So it's not that you're not going to maybe run into somebody who still has like a kind of old school bias, but there is a lot more conversations now, maybe more particularly in the States, maybe more particular in some parts of the country than others, about what are the accessibility barriers if we're only requiring the exact same path into a job. Like, who has had traditional access to getting this job before? Who has been welcome into this space before? So I don't think that having a lack of a specific bachelor's degree or one in general is a barrier. It's all about how you're telling your story. And then to take that a step further, I would say you're going to align with a company that appreciates what you bring to the table. And if they're really hyper-focused, again, most of them are not, but if somebody's super hyper-focused on your bachelor's, they're not the right fit for you anyway. Like, they haven't expanded their viewpoint to understand that we can all come to this world and this job and this profession in different ways that are still fully valid. So sorry, a little therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally echo all of that. And I just wanted to add a quick just anecdote in that in all my years and all of the companies that I recruited for, because I recruited for on the agency side, meaning I had a lot of different companies that I recruited for at the same time. I've literally only had one where it was an actual HR requirement to have a bachelor's and they actually checked. One company in countless that actually cared and brought it up. The rest do not. And just, even in the case of old school hiring managers, like I do think a lot of them are coming around and are receptive to that recruiter feedback. And so I think that it might be less common than you fear. And so I think you should feel good about that.
I love it. Yeah, it's always great to see kind of skill set and aptitude and that ability float to the surface more so than anything else. That's great. All right. And you actually indirectly answered my follow-up question that was coming in through Louise as well of what would you say about an adjacent degree? So fantastic. 2 for 2, y'all. All righty. Going to move over to Scott. So Scott, thank you for contributing. And he is asking, how do you want candidates to highlight that a given case study was an academic project without a client? Is this something that bothers you if you initially aren't sure when seeing the case study thumbnail on the landing page? Alexis, I'm going to throw this your way to start.
Yeah. So I prefer transparency in all interactions on the company side that's hiring and for candidates. So I think that it's good to note whether or not something was an academic project, mainly because the recruiter will probably know anyway, because you're often having to kind of create hypotheticals, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with your projects. Like that's where everyone starts. And that's completely common and typical for entry-level roles. It's to be expected. And I think you can easily just, note it in the intro or at the bottom, or it really depends on how your site is structured. But I think that it's completely fine and expected. And nobody's going to bat an eyelash at that, really, if they are hiring. If you're applying for a principal level position, it's probably not going to be quite the right fit anyway. So if you're going after those more entry level, it'll be expected, and I think better if you note it.
Absolutely. Again, that transparency in the process, right? Kind of those same elements we've been hammering on all day. Definitely something that we see shine through here as well. Diana actually has a great question that circles back to our previous question. On the opposite end of not having a bachelor's, what if you have multiple advanced degrees? Sometimes that has led me to be considered quote unquote overqualified, and one of the reasons that I am looking for a career change. Would having 2 master's degrees or a PhD actually wind up being detrimental in one of these cases? So Jessica, I'll throw it your way first, but again, group, feel free to bounce back and forth there.
I think probably all of us can agree we hate that, like, you're overqualified. Like I don't think a single one of the 3 people I'm sitting in this room with has probably ever like really said that to a candidate, because it's just such a rude thing to say. What I think it comes down to for me is, like, I sort of mentioned this in my last answer, it's how you're framing yourself up in your portfolio, in your bio, in your LinkedIn, and in all of those areas where you're sharing about yourself, resume included. There is nothing wrong with stating very clearly, I have this background and this is what I want. I am looking to make a change. This is intentional. Like, I've applied to this on purpose. Like, I love learning, and this is why the fact that I have 2 masters and a PhD is actually going to play into my ability to be really excellent as a product designer. So, like, tell us, be explicit. Tell us why. Don't worry about that. That's great. Look at how wonderful it is that I have this. Like, just, it's about that. But like, a really quick tip is just don't include dates on any of those educational things, because that could also be playing into it. Is like, I don't know when you got those degrees, but if you have 2 masters and a PhD, I'm guessing that took you quite a few years. And if it didn't, like, someone send this person a bottle of champagne, like, seriously. But get rid of those dates. I never like dates on education, because it's an easy way for us to unconsciously guess age or professional skill level. So that's my 2 cents on education. Tajay, do you have other thoughts?
No, I actually agree with that. I have a friend who's in that boat of, like, just traditional student, but very talented. And she's like, everybody wants me to teach this, that, and the third. And I gave her the same exact advice. That's why I'm smiling, because I'm like, pull the dates off. Don't say when you graduated. It will help you. And then when you have those intro conversations, because once you get on the phone for round 1, that's you are a fit, that's where you're going to sell yourself. Sorry, did I go off for a minute?
Momentarily, I think we got
Oh,
most of what you're saying there, though. So thank you so much. Yeah.
perfect.
No worries. All right, great. Thank you all so much. I think that, again, it is, as was mentioned, kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, right? No one wants to hear that they're too good for a job or they're too resourceful or too skilled. Shame on them, right? So definitely, I think having that different dynamic in your approach, how you're actually submitting your resume and your work, goes a long way as well. Alrighty, so Diana has actually contributed as well. Thank you, Diana. Can you still have a strong portfolio with strong case studies, even if you lack creativity in design/UI in your portfolio? For example, a plain white or black background, simple design, etc. So again, I feel like this is more of a good of the order style of question, but Tajay, if you want to chime in first for someone who is doing this, getting into the field for the first time, would you say a portfolio like this could stack up?
For me, I'm gonna say yes. It's all about like the design of the portfolio. So I'm okay with a minimalistic portfolio. I currently review portfolios for mentors here at Design Lab. It needs to be clean. It can be minimalistic, but it needs to be clean. I can't speak directly to the design of like history of like UI, UX. I can let Alexis speak to that because I know you have experience actually recruiting for designers. But when I'm reviewing it with a quick eye before I pass it off to the design team here at Design Lab, I do look at like, is it a clean design? I might not know exactly what I'm looking for, but is it clean? Can I like read through the page? Things like that. Like I'm a beginner, I'm in foundations, but yeah, no, I definitely look for a clean portfolio. I don't care if it's a white background or a black background. Does the font work for me? Can I actually read it? Like kind of back to those things with the cover letter and the resume. But I'll let Alexis chime in here because I know this is your background.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that it's a really great question because within UX, there are so many different specialties. And I think this makes me think of perhaps like maybe a UX researcher, right? They're still going to have a portfolio to talk through projects that they've worked on. It's not going to be visually oriented. It's not going to be super gorgeous, probably. And that's okay, because this is not a visual design portfolio. They are communicating their thought process and how they approach problem solving. And you can make that look super and easy to understand, with that user experience in mind. And it's fine if, you don't need to feel like it needs to be equivalent of what a senior visual digital designer would produce, because that's not even the job you're trying to get, most likely, right? So I think, and again, looking up examples, so trying to find other, like, I think researchers or, information architect portfolios, I guess, would be another example if somebody's really focused on that. That's going to be very wireframe heavy, perhaps, a little bit more cut and dry. You could look up examples like that. It can still be very persuasive, even though they're not coming in hot with their visual design skills. It's fine because they're not applying for that job anyway, right?
No, that's great to hear. Yeah, I think, again, whether you're on that black and white or that hot pink spectrum we talked about a little bit earlier, right, no matter where you fall in there, it's good to see that work is being evaluated at its core regardless. So that's fantastic. All right, so another question just came in as well. What do you look for in someone who has never had work experience before? Is that a deal breaker? Jessica, I'm going to throw it your way.
I would actually challenge. So I'm curious if you really don't have work experience, like I'm like just graduated from high school or college, or if you feel like you don't have work experience in design. So I think there are two ways we can take this. Like, if you don't have any, like genuinely you just graduated from high school, you've never worked before, like, or what you were doing was like babysitting or something. I think that's the classic, right? We were just, not that that's not a lot. I mean, I wouldn't know, I don't have kids, but I can imagine it would be a lot of work. But if you have none, I mean, that is where you're going to really want to participate in opportunities that allow you to speak to like collaborating, communicating, and being clear. So get in hackathons, so you're working with other team members and you can speak to like collaboration and clear communication style. seek out those internship opportunities probably more than anything, and apprenticeship programs. You could potentially, get onto, we talked about this during the freelancing panel last week, get onto Facebook, which I know sounds old school, but that's where a lot of people who don't know how to make websites are, and like need your help. So, do the freelancing, and then you have that opportunity again to show up and show how you can do this. Now, if you're more in the like, I don't have professional experience, but you're thinking you're discounting what you've actually done, spin that. Everything includes UX design. UX design is human-centered thinking, right? If you worked in a catering business, how were you managing the expectations of your the people who you were serving, the company you worked for, and the person paying the bill? How were you timing getting the food out? How were you getting things wrapped up? Were you, that's stakeholder management, that's project management. So depending on where you're at, those are my two different answers. I challenge you to reframe your old work. If you don't think it's UX, I bet you can reframe it in that way and paint your story about what you're bringing, because it's not nothing. And if you're new, definitely target those newer things. But I'm curious to hear what my fellow panelists think about that, if there's some disagreements or other ideas.
I don't have a ton to add, honestly. I think you kind of covered everything. And I always would just encourage those projects that Jessica mentioned. So finding ways of tackling, it would probably be web-based, right? For projects, even if whether it's paid or not paid, getting experience under your belt is, you can just do that in so many different ways. And I would just really put the focus there. And then over time, you'll have accumulated experience and you will be able to then parlay that into maybe a full-time role or, a full-time contract or something like that. And I think that's the other thing, just being really open-minded to the types of work that you take on early on to get the experience under your belt, even if it's not what you would envision as like your absolute dream job, kind of be willing to be a little bit scrappy at first.
Excellent. Okay. I think we have time for one more brief question here. So I'm just going to throw it out here because I think this might have my favorite verbiage of the day so far in a question. So Emily, thank you for contributing. How much stalking do you recommend on LinkedIn? I feel like it requires a lot of deep diving to make contacts within a company or industry. So any LinkedIn recommendations to kind of build up that network there? I'll throw it out for the good of the order. Whoever would like to jump in, feel free.
Is that me?
Okay.
Who's doing this?
Go ahead.
No, you are. No, you go.
So I always start off with different framing. I would not call it stalking. I would be doing my research. So I would say you want to do the research on the company. If they have a company site, start off with the people operations team, people and culture team. That's where you're going to find your recruiter. Then you can look at the team members on the direct team you want. So that could be the product design team, the design team, whatever you want to call the team. Each company has different titles. But I would say recruiter is going to be your first point of contact. Like, send a nice message. If we don't have any open roles, you can just say like, hey, I'm interested in the company. I think what you guys have going on, it's great. Do your research. So I always suggest like, do you align with the values? Do you align with the mission? Because if not, it's just like, you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time. So make sure you align with what they have, and then just like reach out, let them know like what your background is. Always have an elevator pitch. And I say that in the sense of like maybe like 3 or 4 paragraphs, like, hey, my name is Tajay. I've been in the industry for X, Y, and Z year, blah, 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 blah. I'm interested in your company because this. Do you guys have any open roles at this time? If they don't, we'll love to learn more about the company. And if you have any opportunities coming up, let me know, whether that's an internship, for juniors at least, an internship or any open design roles. Feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to connect with you. Connect with them, leave it there. Might open a door, might not open a door. So it just depends. But I'll let you popcorn off of that, Alexis.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think having realistic expectations of yourself for how fruitful it will be, because you have no control over that part. You have control over what you put out there into the universe and how much, effort you put into that, how personable you are, the research that you put into it. I like using the term research too. And I think because you don't have control whether or not somebody gets back to you or they have the job, putting the focus on what you do have control over is really important. And reminding yourself that if you don't hear back right away, or you feel like, in a given couple of weeks span, you're just not hearing back, you have to understand that it'll just take consistency. It's sort of like on the other end too, right? Like recruiters reach out to candidates and we don't always hear back, and you have to just sort of keep plugging away and know that if you're consistent and you're putting quality outreach into the world, the hope is that eventually that is going to lead to something. It's never guaranteed, but really put that focus on your quality outreach and just go easy on yourself if you're not hearing back or you're not getting the responses that you're looking for. That's all part of it too. And you just have to kind of allow for that and go easy on yourself and try to keep your head in the game as best you can.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I do think it's worth doing your research and looking for, can I make a human connection? We've said that sort of since the beginning throughout this call, right? We want to be thought of like as humans and respected, and like we are just doing our best over here. So like, yeah, taking a little time. You're not going to be able to do it for every single job, but if it's a job that you're really interested in, and I would say, submitting like 5 to 10 really good applications a week that you spent time researching on is going to serve you far better, because we will feel that in your application, than be like easy apply, fired off 100. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, all three of you, so much. And all of you, thank you so much for your wonderful questions today as well. I mean, I don't know if I've even been able to scroll through half the questions that have come through. This has been fantastic. But really getting to connect with all of you and getting that individual feedback is always so wonderful for us. Jessica, I'm going to turn it back over your way for any kind of closing thoughts you may have as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Glenn, for moderating so I could participate in a different way today. I just want to thank, for any of you who have attended multiple these events during the series, thank you so much for coming. I really hope that it has been a good experience for you all. If you have not attended them, they are all recorded and live on our blog and on our YouTube site. So you can go ahead and reference those back if you missed something, or you want to rewatch or see what insights were shared. Please feel free to connect with any of us on this panel on LinkedIn. We do know that there were lots of questions and we may not have gotten to all of them. So please feel free to connect. And then lastly, for the cohort of June for foundations, if you aren't in our community yet, we would love to have you. Hopefully we've inspired you. And we're offering a free career services coaching session for folks who sign up. So, but all that to say, thank you so much. I've really loved hosting these and being a part of this series. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to this panel for coming. It's been really wonderful. And what a great way to round out the May event. But yeah, I do have to leave it to you, Glenn, to end our session. No I'm not in charge this time.
Again, thank you everyone so much. To our panelists, huge round of applause. I mean, you're all getting all the kudos in the world in the chat already. But again, thank you so much for everything you've done today and also throughout this series. For our chatters, thank you for contributing. Have a wonderful rest of your Thursday, everyone. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.